So I was watching this program today, right? And this Indian lady was making a curry, and she was saying how the Nigella seeds are a thing that Indians have put in their curries for years and years and years. And rather than having things like garlic and onion, she said, it has some kind of fusing system where when it cooked in oil, it releases a certain oil or gas, which gives it that flavor, which normally you'd say garlic gives instead. And then it makes you realize there's so many alternatives for things that we think we need. For example, milk. We can just have so many other things instead of milk, and you wouldn't even particularly realize. Like if you had a cup of tea and somebody gave you cashew milk, you would probably notice. But if somebody made um, a shepherd's pie or a main meal or cauliflower cheese, you probably wouldn't notice whether they put oat milk in or not. And then it's funny because you think about what these seeds are or what turmeric is. It's just a root in the ground. So when you dig up a tree, you have the root. It's basically that, right? And we're eating it. And it's just funny how there's so many other alternatives that we can eat. And yes,
Yeah, cool. Yeah, totally. Totally. And I think milk's especially interesting because I think there's like a cultural attachment to milk. So I think it's less about the fact that it's milk, but because people are so attached to this idea of what milk is, like there's a like emotional attachment to like milk. At least there is in America. That like these alternative milks have a stigma because it's not milk, and milk is this like special thing, even though it's just really just another thing that we consume and nothing special.
yeah, cow's milk. Again, it's like going back to years and years and years when people had farms and there wasn't billions of humans. Everyone was just like live in local villages. They'd have a few cattle. And it's like what food is. It's not just filling up your stomach. It's an emotional connection. It's okay,
Mhm.
so this was when I last had a meal with my family, or when I grew up, I had this. So milk, we have it from birth, connects us to our parents and family and motherhood and nurture. So it's not just milk in a bowl of cereal. There's a reason why we have milk because it brings us back to see our parents giving us milk before bed, for example. But actually, milk is really bad. I get spots when I have milk, and I've had spots my whole life. And I realized at 27, it was milk that was giving me spots. So it's because it's the amount of protein that's in it. And again, we are essentially putting another protein of an animal in another living species body. It's got its own milk. Like my milk comes from my human mum. That cow gets its milk from his cow mum. So why would you have milk from another animal? It doesn't make sense. Like the enzymes, the cells, what it does, it's obviously going to be different. It's like horse tranquilizer. A horse can deal with that, but you give it to a human or a sheep or something, or I don't know, a chicken, it's going to be too powerful for it. And the horse tranquilizer, or what's given to a horse, is called ketamine, and humans take ketamine. And the reason why they have that effect on them is because it's such a powerful thing. And it's like, well, that's for a horse, not for a human. Why are we giving a human milk when that's for a cow, which is what, 5 times bigger than us? You know what I mean? No wonder I got spots.
Right, and their DNA is different too. It's a totally different makeup. I mean, a lot of people who are lactose intolerant, when they have milk that are from animals that are like a bit closer in our like DNA, like sheep's milk or like goat's cheese, it's a little bit easier for them to digest because it's a little bit closer to their DNA, which I think is fascinating. It's like we're so far. I don't know. It's like why would we choose cows and stick with the cows when we're so it's just tradition. That's really what it is. It's just tradition because it's what we've always done, and that's one of the things that have stuck. Instead of it evolving with us, like technology and the way we live and fashion or whatever else, milk just from a cow has stuck with our humans, and it's really hard for people to give that up.
So why do you think that people, for example, there's a brand called Cow and Gate, which is basically powder which you add water in, which makes which a baby has. Obviously, it's not milk; it's just man-made fat crap, basically. But why do you think that people see an advert on TV and see this special powder for your baby and give that to the child rather than let the baby suck on the tit of its own mother? Why?
Well, some women can't. This goes into a whole nother topic around, like a woman's ability to breastfeed for an extended period of time. Some women are lucky and they're able to do it longer, but some women, they dry up quicker. Some women, it might cause irritation, or they might just not have the time if they're like working, and so they might not have the ability to, because it doesn't just, it keeps going when you keep latching the baby. And so unless you're continuously latching the baby, it's easier for the breast to dry up. And so they can't, like some people just can't naturally breastfeed. Or if they're on medications that they need to live on to survive, like, you know, that might harm the baby, they have to use alternative formula as well. So that's a whole other thing. Not everyone can.
So, so every female can produce milk, but just for a different level of time. So some will dry up quicker than others, right? Is that what you're saying? Everyone can,
Yeah,
but
I'm
just the
not a
length of time.
professional. I'm not a professional on this by any means, but yeah, I'm not even 100% sure that all women can. You know, I think it's rare if someone can't, but I don't know if all women can. And some women, like, the ducks just like don't produce milk as nicely or as much as they need. Like sometimes their breasts are producing, but it's not enough to actually fill the bottle for what the baby needs at that time. So they have to supplement. You know what I mean? So it's kind of varies person to person.
So every human being is different from the past human being or from the human being next to them. Different evolution. So Chinese person, their DNA has been around for longer than, say, an English person or a Jamaican in the jungle. Everyone's got many more ancestors depending on how long they've been around for. Wouldn't you say that if a woman compared to that woman over there can't breast can't get give breast milk for, say, a period of time versus the other person who can do it for longer, maybe that child doesn't need breast milk, right? If it's all about everyone's DNA and evolution is different, why does now that child need breast milk based on his own genes and his own cells? Because everyone else stops having milk at, say, 1 years old. Maybe in his generation and his ancestors and his cells and how he's created from his mother and her mother, maybe they don't need that much milk at that time. So why would we need to then give more because a baby's supposed to have it until, say, 1 or 2 years old? Like everyone's different. Like your ancestors are different to mine. You might be able to tolerate certain foods compared to me because in America they might have always had grains and shit like that, and in England grains came around, say, 50 years ago. So now your body and your mother and her mother's body can tolerate grains more. So, you know, like Chinese and soybean, they've had it for years. But English person suddenly has a soybean, they got a soy allergy. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, sometimes women's ducts dry up before the baby's even 4 months, and the baby can't eat anything other than, you know, it doesn't have teeth or like the digestive enzymes to digest anything other than milk, and that's when formula is created. So I think it's less about you know, like getting to an age where they're able to eat something else, and it's more about you know, just genetically some people are just not able to, you know, and also environmentally, and also it just looking at like, I think it's kind of a luxury to be able to, it's a privilege to be able to have the nutrients necessary to be able to produce breast milk. You know, not everyone has that ability, or the resources or the time to do that. So, you know, I think there's a lot of things that are playing against women and mothers, and they're making it difficult for mothers to actually like, you know, properly take care of their kid. And there's so much pressure around what women should be doing to take care of their kids and what ways, and what's right and what's wrong. And it's like no woman can do anything right when it comes to raising their own child. The whole world has an input.
Yeah, what I find is that when something is reserved, say like 40 years ago being gay, no one said anything, right? And now all of a sudden it's okay to be gay, and now everyone comes out. Mental health issues, no one says anything, now everyone comes out. At some point, I think that it's going to be the same for breastfeeding. Now, if a woman's breastfeeding in a restaurant, they can't believe what she's doing. Like, oh my God, why is she doing that? That, like gay and vegan movement and whatever, is going to become a norm at some point. Everything becomes a norm which isn't popular at some point. Dreadlocks, white guys having dreadlocks, multicolored hair, things that are seen as, oh my God, you should be doing that, will eventually become just accepted as the norm. So breastfeeding in public is the next stage because, again, you rarely see it. And eventually that will become the norm. It has to. And so
I
it
hope
should.
so. I hope so, you know, like I think it's crazy that women can't breastfeed. That's like
It's
absurd.
fucking absurd. It is absurd.
It's really absurd. Like,
The,
get over it.
the
It's a
only
natural
living
process.
the only living species on the planet that can't or is ashamed to feed its offspring.
Right,
Like that's
exactly. Listen,
absolutely crazy. Like
that's a great
50,000, probably
perspective.
more human beings on the planet. Sorry, species of on the planet: cows, sheep, goats, giraffes, kangaroos. But a human being can't. It's stupid.
It's pretty incredible that we think that we're not just above other species in that way, but that natural process is disgusting, and that we are above that, and we shouldn't be doing that, even though we should be doing it. You know what I mean? Like, people are like, you should be breastfeeding, but don't do it in public. You should be doing this, but don't do it this way. Like, there's just so many restrictions and judgments on like the way people should be living, that it's to the point where really everyone just like minded their own damn business. Would we have as much drama as we do? Like, does it really matter how somebody lives their life if they're not negatively affecting other people?
Again, it all comes down to everyone's following a follower, and when the pattern changes, they're looking to like their leader of, should we be doing this? Like, I'm not fitting in anymore, so we look there. Should we be doing that? Like, should she be doing that? And if they say no, or the leader who's been following a group of followers who don't think that's okay says no, then they look at that person in shame. For a guy, if they were to see that, they'd be like, oh my god, a boob. So you take them away, which means the stigma is with females. So what the fuck? It's like that's your own. Like, you should be you should be one group. Like, why would a female have more stigma over that than a guy when they're all part of the same sex? Like, that's you. Like, that's going to be you. Your mother did it to you. So why would you have that attitude towards it? And the answer is people want to fit in, and they're scared of stigma. They're scared of being judged, and they don't want to be the first person to make the move. So unless it's common to do it, the opposite is shun. Why are you doing that? That's wrong. And it's only wrong because not enough people do it. Eventually, when everyone starts to do it, people will be getting their tits out for fun. You know, they'll have a fake doll just for the sake of it, because everyone else around the table is doing it. And the waiter will come over like, "Can I get your order number?" And she'll just see four real babies and just some fake doll, and she wants to get her tit out because everyone else has, because she doesn't feel she doesn't fit in. And then eventually it's like, "Madam, you can't do that." And it's like, well, why can't I do that? They're all doing it. And then that's another thing, because it's like, well, yes, you're right, but technically you're just getting your tit out, which is illegal, decent exposure. But they are too, but it's feeding a child. So again, it's very tricky if that was to happen. It's like transgender toilets. Male, female, do you have one for both, or can I just use the disabled toilet? Then the disabled people are like, well, that's my toilet. And I'm like, I've seen one disabled person come into this restaurant in 2 months. So why can't they use that toilet? Why would you build another toilet which takes up the space of chairs and tables in a restaurant, which means loss of money for the business, because in case you want to come in and have a wee in your wheelchair once every 2 months. So again, it's very tricky. And everyone happy, no one's unhappy, and everyone's,
Making things accessible. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going back to why women judge women for doing things. It's really because for so long women have been suppressed and judged and told what to do for so long, that they've created that sense of like disempowerment, empowerment through telling people what to do. Hence why there are Karens. I don't know if you've heard the term Karens.
Yeah.
But that's because for so long and still women are disempowered, and it's through control that they regain some sort of power, some sort of claim to power. And because they are in the hierarchy of like privilege, white women are higher up, but we're still, white women are still below white men. And so there's still like in society some shit on for women, not getting paid as much, getting, sexually harassed, name all the things. And so there's this sense of disempowerment that happens in conditioning when we evolve and grow up. Then these Karens and these women that judge other women, they're just displacing their own disempowerment on other women and on other people who are less privileged than them to reclaim some sort of power, to like feel some sort of like false illusion of power through control.
It's so true. I see that a lot. Giving somebody who feels a sense of power, who shouldn't feel that at all, and they feel something that you've never felt before, that form of control and power. And it could be anything. It could be just getting your own way in a restaurant. It could be the bus waiting for you longer than they should have. And once you get that power, you've reached this feeling you're not really supposed to feel, right? And then when they don't get their own way next time, they go up a level of control and then they become crazy. Not, I mean, anyone, male, female. And that's why people who have power who shouldn't have it, it is dangerous because they shouldn't be there. And the only way they can keep it is if they reinforce control, which is the problem. Somebody who has that control should have never had that control. And once you get a glimpse of that power, it is hard to not have it because you should never have had it. And I see it everywhere. People who get their own way and then they don't, and they just go, you literally see them boil inside and they go up a level to get what they want because they got it once. But that's lucky. And and that's dangerous. It's like giving somebody, yeah, it's dangerous.
Mm. So it's reinforcing negative behavior. So what's happening is I really think that people, it's a combination of things. People don't do their own inner work, their own personal development work, and it's a sense of respect and that they're seeking externally that they don't have internally. And so what I found in these situations is the people who are like coddling and overgiving versus the people who are asking for too much is this like typical like narcissist empath relationship. It might not be an empath or a narcissist in the relationship, but it's this toxic relationship of overgiving and overtaking that we see a lot. And that's what we see in society and that you're talking about, of that behavior being reinforced. And so what it is this lack of personal development that then creates this dynamic. People who don't love themselves and haven't taken care of themselves, they see their worth and they see themselves giving or receiving worth and feeling valuable by overgiving. So they're depleting, right? And then they're depleted, so then they go out of their way and they're like, well, I'm depleted, I deserve that. And then they do it to somebody else and they take for what they need from somebody else, which creates this perpetual cycle. So I think what would heal it all, hope you're following. I think what would heal it all is everyone did their own inner work and held strong boundaries on what they're not willing to give. We would actually heal this whole paradigm of like this like narcissistic like over privileged people who are like taking what they want. I think it would heal that whole thing because I really think that is a result of somebody's boundaries being infiltrated and them like losing something that they had to then feel like they need to pull from somebody else to reclaim. You know what I mean? So if everyone held their own boundaries, like, nah, I don't feel comfortable with that, it would hurt one person, but it would break the chain of people's taking from other people.
Yeah, it's like robbing Pete to pay Paul. There's not enough funds. You need to bring extra funds in. I was listening to this guy on the radio. He's a radio presenter. He was bitching about a radio. He was bitching about an artist, right? Because they were bitching about him. He doesn't understand that people are going to keep bitching about him because he bitches about them because they were bitching about him. Someone has to break the pattern. So if you're used to people bitching about you, the natural thing to do is to bitch about them back to get even. But today, how they see it is, I didn't deserve this. Why are you bitching about me? So I'm going to bitch about you. And it's this ping pong backwards and forwards. And the only way to break the cycle is once you receive that shit thrown at you, to let it go. And that is hard. So that's what it comes down to, doing your own work of knowing this pattern, which is whatever you put out is going to come back until you don't put it out. And it is hard because everywhere you look, how can you tell somebody who's got people talking about them and they just want to rage and talk about them back in that moment of that rage? You can't tell that person to let it go. Don't tell me to let it go. You can't do that. And they don't want to listen. And I mean, Christ, get out their way. But that's the way it is. So again, after the fact, let them run, then don't tell them then. After the fact, then explain to them. And then again, how do you tell somebody in the future that when you get angry, don't get angry because you're going to get angry next time, and all they want to do is release that anger? It is very tricky. But yeah, that's the typical robbing Pete to pay Paul. Somebody has to come in and break the pattern because it's just going to be borrowing from him to pay him and borrowing from him to pay him, and Pete hasn't got any money, so you go to Paul, but it was Pete's money anyway, so Paul hasn't got any money, and then everyone's stealing, you know.
Yep, breaking the cycle by just like mindfulness and self-healing. That's truly what it is, right? I mean, it's like deeper awareness, like a wider awareness of what's going on, plus the wisdom and like personal power to be like, I'm whole enough to not have to either take this from somebody or throw this shit at somebody.
What's your thoughts on indoor plants? Because I've realised that there's no such thing as an indoor plant, right? Every plant is grew outside at some point. If you grew it in a greenhouse, then you man-made that thing, right? So you got it started, but it still needs to be part of nature. I realised that when I plant indoors, they get to a certain level based on like the pot that it's in, and it just doesn't do anything. It dies, and then I put it outside, and it fucking bloomed. What's your thoughts on indoor plants?
So most indoor plants are tropical, you know, that are considered indoor plants. They're tropical plants. Like when I lived in Hawaii, every plant I have in this room right now, I'm looking at, every single one of them lived in nature in Hawaii, in the rainforest, in the tropics, grew naturally. I love these plants. Tropical plants are my favorite plants. When I was in Hawaii, I felt at home with the plants. I was like, oh my God, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. I feel like this sense of just like, oh, I'm home, you know? But I don't like living in Hawaii because there's no rock climbing and it's really far away, and you know it's not my home. So I like having those plants that make me feel really good and feel at home and feel expansive and like comfortable in my space. And yeah, I mean plants will outgrow pots, but you just transplant them and put them in a bigger pot, you know, or like prune them or just take care of them. Like nurturing plants is such a therapeutic experience, hence horticultural therapy.
No, it is like just seeing a plant grow from a bud and then it flowers. That is an amazing thing. Like every time you get up, it's like having a dog you got to let out. You've got a purpose to look at that plant and to prune it back if it needs pruning, like a child. And plants, that they are powerful. I think flower plants though don't really last indoors, but green plants they do for some reason. Maybe it's due to the light, or I don't know. What's your thoughts on that? Tropical plants are mainly green. Indoors is warm, so maybe that's why the green plants live indoors better than say a rose bush in a little pot. Because I've got a little rose bush, and
I see.
it had some flowers, and then it didn't. Just nothing's happened. It's just stopped.
Well, when something goes to flower, it's done. It's a full cycle. So that's a complete cycle. Some things are slower growers, you know, like a lot of like slow growers, it takes longer for them to go to flower and then they live longer because of that. But as soon as something goes to flower, it should die because it's a cycle. So you'll see that with the peace lily, there's clumps in here. You can't see that because it's blurry, but there's clumps inside of here. And so this one's gone to flower. And once it's done, that clump will die. And it's no longer, it's dead. You have to cut it out. But luckily, it's propagated and it's created more of them. So you won't even notice. So the thing with rose bushes, it might not have propagated enough or created, you know, new babies for it to take over once it flowered. You know, I actually don't know much about rose bushes because oh no, they do. You cut them down and then they regrow. So I think it does create from the roots. It creates new flowers each year.
So I had like it's like say 10 flowers, right? Then they all died. I'm waiting for like new ones to grow. But you saying that once those 10 have grown in that cycle, then you have to wait for another cycle unless there's already ones there waiting to bud.
Right. Yeah. You have to wait for another cycle. I don't know a whole lot about like rose bushes, but I can't imagine it's much different than other plants. You know, just looking at a plant cycle, that's what plants do. They grow, they go to flower to put the seeds out, and then that was their purpose, and then they die.
Ask me a question, whatever
Hmm.
comes to your mind.
What's your favorite season?
So I used to, when it's really cold, and then I think back to summer of being out late, being out through the day, shirt off, heat, everyone's out down the pubs and the restaurants. Everything seems to be happy. Everyone's happy. So everyone's energy's up and it feels good. But then when we had the heat wave and it was just the same, I started to think actually this balance of having the seasons and the nature and the leaves falling off the trees and the smell, and you see everything die and come back. That was actually something really nice. And then I realized actually maybe having summer all the time isn't perfect, but you only appreciate something when you haven't got it. And if you have it, you get too much of it and you don't want it. So again, it's just coming out of that present moment of thinking how I will feel after rather than being in that moment. It's like having a girlfriend or boyfriend, getting bored and then wanting another one. But you've got to think in the future, if I have another one, I'm going to be in the same pattern again where we get too bored of each other and it's just going to repeat. So looking from outside the present moment sometimes can help you appreciate or evaluate that present moment. Because having the sun all the time now, yeah, you can be out all night, be out all day, but like anything, it becomes boring. You need change. And in the earth, there's always a cycle of change and weather. So there's never just, I mean, there probably is just desert heat and, but for humans to live on, there's always been a balance. If you go to the desert, it's too hot, you'll be dead. If it's too cold, you're dead. So life has only ever known that balance. So that's what we are supposed to have. So we shouldn't get too content with warm house and a lot of nice nights out, because that's not reality, because the cycle changes. Just like our kids grow up and their little cute baby face listening to us tell them what to do is going to stop at some point, and they're going to say, no, I'm not doing it. And then you can't reinforce that control, like as we said, do as I said. No, right. Just they've become equal. Let them go,
Yeah, I mean, seasons are so special. And when I lived in Hawaii, you'd think that in like the tropical areas don't have seasons, but they do. Like they might not have snow, but you got the hurricane season. You got the wet season, you got the dry season, and you can definitely feel like our bodies acclimate to summer and fall, or summer and winter everywhere. Like I would be cold in the winter in Hawaii, but I'm from Michigan, which is like very north and cold. And so it's like interesting that like our body needs that cycle to grow. Like we need that change, we need that, and it's like we acclimate to wherever we are to like to connect with the land that we're on, to be in that frequency, in that cycle, whatever it may be. And you definitely can feel the seasons. But yeah, seasons to me, like they all have a purpose. They all teach us something. They give us something. They give us an opportunity to explore a different part of ourselves. Like summer is, related to like childhood, like very playful, adventurous, social. Fall is more, we're kind of going into ourselves, and things are starting to change in between seasons. So it's uncomfortable. It's like a threshold, and so we ask those deeper questions of like, okay, well, what's coming next? What should we be doing? The fun stuff is kind of ending, and this cold thing's coming. Like there's a lot of uncertainty and instability. And winter is this beautiful phase of like adulthood to like come in, to like do that work, to be close to family, to nurture ourselves and do things that are more inward. And then spring is this like elderhood, this like rebirth, where we give back and we enter into a new phase, and we begin to connect with our environment more in a different way.
See, you look at sheep, right, and horses. Every winter they grow thick fur, and in the summer you see it just being shredded off. It's like they've got a disease, yeah. It's like they've had like chemotherapy, and there's like some hair and there's not. But that's part of life. And then I shaved my hair in the summer, and it just didn't grow for ages. And then as it started to get cold, it started to grow quicker. And I
Wow.
said, I didn't know hair grew based on temperature. But then I'm thinking, well, why wouldn't it? Right? Chimpanzees, sheep, cow, it's all fur. It adapts to its climate. And if a sheep and a donkey and a horse will grow thick fur in the winter and shred it off in the summer, why would a human being's hair not grow quicker in the winter than the summer? And it's just like thinking trick all treats, where it's trick or treat. Some things we've just had in our head for so long that unless you question it, you don't question it. It's just the way it is. And human hair grows quicker in the winter. Of course it would, to keep us warm. Like when we had hair years ago, like caveman hair all over our body, we needed to keep warm. So why would it not? That's why we lost hair in the first place, because we started to go in caves, and so it was always warm by the campfire. So we stopped making hair, and because we're indoors all the time, we still don't need to make hair. Whereas if we went outside, and lived outside, the next generation of people would start to be more hairy. Like it's just nature. But again, didn't realize that
In
because
north versus south, like people that live more in the north versus towards the equator, there's going to be more hairier people in the north versus towards the equator when it's warmer, and they're not going to be, inside as much, needing more hair. Well, that's interesting. I didn't really think about that before. I really didn't know that hair grew in the winter, but like looking at that logically, that makes sense.
I mean, also, when we had really heat, a lot of hot heat, I was growing vegetables and growing plants. When it was really, really, really hot, the plants just stopped growing, right? And when it started to get colder, like now, the plants have just boomed. Like we're talking about 10 degrees, right? In the summer, it was say 25, 30. It's now 10 degrees. There's no flowers, there's no buds, but they're just fucking blooming. Like they have just grown enormous. And it's like, oh, why does that make sense? Why is it growing in the cold and not in the heat? And then it comes down to everything has a specific germ time. You know, you said every year animals create life. Every year the squirrels they come out of hibernation. Every year all the acorns on the ground they will start to grow. But everything has a perfect like germination period. It's not the same for everyone else. Like a human being will, as in, and most animals will give birth say in April. But if you look at a squirrel, don't quote me on this, but it gives, or maybe a pigeon was giving birth, say, a few months ago, whereas most nature gives birth in spring, which is like February, April. So it's not just the same cycle for every single thing, which explains why my flowers and my crops are starting to bloom now when it's almost winter. And in the summer, they didn't do anything. Like I planted the seed like January and it had like a little sprout in summer, and I thought that's it, it's going to be over. And now they're just starting to bloom and it's winter. It doesn't make sense.
That doesn't make sense. I'm curious about that. What's going on there? I wonder what kind of plant it is too. But I do know
It's a
that like
Californian poppy.
poppy.
California poppy.
Okay, yeah, I don't know much about those. Mm-mm. That's interesting. That's really interesting. I wonder what's going on. I wonder also just like you planted it then, so now 11 months later is, or I don't know. I mean, who knows? Maybe you've been watering it differently, or it has different temperature, or it's just getting the right attention in some way, shape, or form that it's finally like taking off, or it's just exponential growth. That could be a thing too. Just finally compiled, to the point where it's noticeable that it's growing.
What's your thoughts on sleeping with the window open when you go to bed? So whether it's winter or summer, sleeping with the window open, even if it's just a little bit, and the benefits for and the negatives for
I
one's
can't.
health.
Cat. My cat. I can't. There's my cat. When I didn't have my cat, I would always like to have my window open a little bit, but not in the winter because it's really cold. So in the summer, I would.
What I realise is that if you go to bed with your window open, you don't have to blow your nose in the morning, right? And the only reason why you have to blow your nose is because of dust from moving around during the night. I know when I go to bed on my back and I wake up on my back, there's nothing in my nose. But if I go to my front, to my side, to my back, move the covers, move the pillow, there's dust all over the place. You cannot even see, but it's there. And I realised that when I used to toss and turn, I wake up with thick bogies in my nose and I've got to blow. Now, I don't blow my nose anymore. And which is very interesting because it is winter, I'm not opening the window before bed, right? But in the summer, say when it's hot and sticky, even though the window's open, you're still moving around. So the dust is from the covers and moving everywhere, but we're having the window open provides circulation. So the
Hmm.
dust doesn't just stay there. It fucks off out the window and new air comes in and replaces the old air with the dust. So having a window open means you'll wake up with less bogies in your nose and you won't have to blow your nose as much as if you didn't have the window open, which explains why so many people who have health issues, they don't go out. No, sorry, people who spend so much time indoors have health issues, respiratory issues. Often they don't hoover, they don't open the window, they don't change their clothes because they're used to that smell. So they don't open the window because it brings a new smell in. So to them, it's like having a stranger in your house. They're not used to that smell of the animals, the dogs and the cats and the clothes and whatever. Um, so they don't open the window. But that's the worst thing you can do because now you've just got your stagnant carbon dioxide air and dust in there. That's gonna fuck up your breathing system. And then, which is why a lot of people you see like these hoarder programs in America, they just got shit everywhere they're just in their own box. They can't have any air in because it changes the smell. And the whole point of a hoarder is because of familiarity and things that make them feel familiar. You open the window, you're going to bring a new smell in, and it's going to be like, oh my god, I'm not used to that smell. Shut the window. Then you've got all this dust everywhere.
Yeah, the stagnant energy. I mean, there's a lot to say about just the energetics of a space when you don't open a window. You know, I teach in my students when like they go to do a cleansing ceremony to open all their windows and doors, no matter what year it is, to release out energy and also call in new energy. Because I mean, gosh, just looking at the energetics of a space that the doors and windows don't open, it's everything that we pick up on, we open up and release into our space. And everything we're exposed to, like scrolling on Facebook or Instagram, the conversations we have, the TV we watch, our thoughts, our feelings, like everything just kind of gets put into this space. And so imagine how much we interact with each day that isn't aligned with what we want to be surrounded with. That when we come home, we kick off our shoes, sit on the couch and go, and open up and take on everything that's in our space that we've just picked up on forever, you know, like that is just constantly being bombarded in our energy field, which of course we're going to feel sick. Of course we're going to feel not aligned or stagnant or like not living our purpose or our best life because we're just like stuck in stagnant energy of everything you've been picking up on for however long since the last time you cleansed the energy of your home.
Yeah, like
You know, like open the windows.
if you have a curry, you sweat out that curry and you stink of curry. If you see a dog and if you go to a dog when it's been asleep, it has a really nice smell, right? I don't know whether you have a pet. Maybe your cat has that smell, but when your pet's been asleep, smell him, smell its paws. It gives off a scent, right? When a human being wakes up, we have a sleep smell in the room, right? That smell that we have when you wake up. Now, so that says that we're giving off pheromones, energy, sweat during the night. So who would think that opening your window would release our feelings and our thoughts that we've collected during the day? It's almost like, can wind blow energy? Like, because if our thoughts are energy, can wind blow it? And the answer is, well, that wind is the energy in the first place. It's already the same thing. So yeah, you can blow out. If you've been and had a shitty day at work, you can literally blow out all that negative energy and let's say the sweat and the pores opening up and whatever in the room, it will blow out. And if you're taking in oxygen, that oxygen level is going to reduce, especially as you breathe that carbon dioxide. So how else are you supposed to get oxygen in if you don't open the window? Like that doesn't even make sense. So of course, having the window open in your house is powerful. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
especially like winter as well. I mean, winter especially because we're spending so much time indoors with man-made heating system,
Yeah.
which
Yeah,
tricks our
sure.
body into believing that it's like summer, but it's not. You know, so that you know, in.
Yeah, very interesting. Yes, you're inspiring me. I'm going to open all my windows after this.
And you do feel better because
What
it's
was that?
fresh, and you do feel better because it's fresh.
Oh yeah, for sure, absolutely. I mean, that's gosh, a cleansed space. Like everyone loves a cleansed space. Everyone steps into a room that's been cleansed energetically. Like, oh, this feels so good. Wow, I feel like I can breathe. Like it's not stagnant. Like I feel expansive. It feels good. Yeah, it's pretty essential, and it's a small thing that I don't think many of us think about often. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
And I also did a podcast with somebody who said how she had indoor plants, and she said it was by the window with the light, and it was had the correct heating and the correct water, but it wasn't doing anything. And then she opened the window, and it started to grow. So what does that say? It says that air
Oh,
is a crucial part to a plant, not only sun and water and the temperature, but air. So oxygen, of course, plants give out oxygen, so I don't know, maybe they need oxygen just as much. So them being in your room is carbon dioxide more than oxygen. So of course it's not going to grow. And then you put it outdoors. She said she opened the window and it started to blossom. And it does make absolute sense because we see it as an indoor plant. So we think, oh, it's indoor. It doesn't need sun or doesn't need light. But just because a man's put a label on it saying indoor doesn't mean shit. It's a plant. You know what I mean? It needs the
right.
same elements that the outdoor plant needs because it came from outdoors. The seed came from
Right.
outdoors, even if you grew it indoors.
If anything, it actually probably needs, if it's an indoor plant, it probably, not always, I shouldn't say that, but a lot of the tropical plants actually need more sun. And the indirect light from our windows, what actually is made into our house, like that might not be enough for that plant. There are some that like don't need a lot of sun for sure, but like a lot of the ones that we look at that are beautiful, they need a lot of sun too. And the indirect sun that comes from a window just isn't enough.
What do you think about smoothies? Because this thing about 5 a day, which I think is bollocks, right? 5 a day. So having too much fruit is actually bad because we're not so the theory of the fruit is that because the sugar turns to fat, that during the winter period, if you have lots of fruit, then that sugar will turn to fat, which keeps you insulated for the winter, right? Almost like a keto diet where it will burn the fat and you have more energy for longer, right? But 5 a day, having fruit and veg because it's healthy. Again, media and corporations. What do you think is the benefits and the negatives to having so much fruit? Because I used to think to myself, okay, well, it's not man-made sugar like you'd put in your coffee, yeah. But then because it's like fructose versus glucose, but it's still a form of sugar, so it will still have similar effects, even though it's supposed to be healthier. Um,
It's still sugar. It's still sugar. I actually knew a couple fruitarians in Hawaii because there's so much fruit there. And after a while, your body just doesn't function the same. Like you have these short spurts of energy, and you're constantly starving, and like it's just you're just in this like constantly. I look at like frequency, and it's just like this all of the time. Like our body isn't meant to just have just sugar. I mean, that's harmful to constantly be like burning quick, like we need more substance to ground us. And I mean, if you look at like Ayurveda, you look at the doshas. Not everyone is a kapha who needs this sugar all the time to lift them up and to get them moving. Like a lot of us are pittas and vatas, where that sugar is just like bringing us up more and like making us like less grounded and more like anxious and creating an energetic missile, like energetic like distortion within our being that's like preventing us from like growing or making us feel comfortable and allowing us to like actually do day-to-day activities. Like too much fruit is I wouldn't recommend that. Having that much fruit is like not, that makes me feel, I feel sick thinking about that.
so in
I love
England,
fruit.
yeah, in England, right, 5 a day. So a banana, an orange, an apple, strawberries, and peaches every single day, right? 5 a day keeps the doctor away. Again, that is a load of bollocks, right? Like most things in life, because it's no one really understands. They're just following the trend. Like every packet, it will say one of your 5 a day. So if you get a pack of strawberries, one of your 5 a day. Okay, so I need to have a pack of strawberries, a pack of bananas, pineapple, kiwi, and watermelon, right? And obviously people follow this trend. So when you're younger, they give the kids fucking banana and orange and apple in his lunch, right? Again, you get that spike and then you die down. But there's just so many, like humans beings would have had, say, berries and nuts if there wasn't, sorry, berries and fruits if there wasn't anything else, right? But nuts you can have all the time and you don't get that spike because that just stays in you. And then when you need to burn that fat, it's there. But fruit, on the other hand, people wouldn't say nuts are healthy. They'll say have fruit versus nuts, right? Bag of cashews or banana. Our parents or somebody would say have a banana. But actually, going for the nuts is like 10 times better than having the fruit because not only do you get the consistent energy of a bag of nuts versus the banana, but that will be in your system for far longer because when you put say nuts in some water it doesn't disperse like bread does. You put bread in some water, disperses, so you fill yourself up for that 2 seconds until your acids break it down and it's like what have I got to eat. And so you put like banana in or an apple, which is just an apple's just like water. It's just like nothing. You can crush a watermelon and it's just like nothing, so you get that spike from the sugar but there's nothing inside you, at least with a nut. Or like you've got some physical things to work with and it will take a long time to break down. um
Mm-hmm.
And again, you could say that's the same as wanting to get rich quickly. Doesn't exist. You get rich over time by building up businesses.
That's why keto makes more sense. Like keto is more fat. It makes sense. And the common misconception is people think that when we eat fat, it stores as fat. But fat actually doesn't store as fat. Carbs do, which fruit are carbs. Like that's kind of fun. Like that's pretty funny that like I didn't know about this 5 thing. That's really interesting. Younger, that's a lot. Like I couldn't eat a whole apple for a long time. I'm a very small human. Like I'm 100 pounds. So like, when I was in high school, I was like 70, 60 pounds. And the whole apple is a lot. Like I can't imagine eating 5 pieces of fruit. That would be like my whole day.
Yeah, like
It's horrible.
some of the size of these bananas and apples and oranges, they are massive. And again, like by the time your belly has gone down from that expansion, that's like an hour later. So now you've got to have like 5 hours to have your 5 pieces of fruit. Now it's dinner time, and you're like, I'm not even hungry because I'm full up, but you've not got any nutrition in you. Like you've got nothing in you. You just got like a balloon was blown up in your stomach, and the air's come out, and it was just air. And yeah, people think having fats is going to make you fat. Like if you have cream and cheese and stuff, butter, it's going to make you fat. We get fat. Fat is food. It's not fat. You don't get a piece of meat, rip off its fat, eat that, and then you become fat. You digest everything, and if you have too much food, that is what fat is. Fat is not just fat. You know what I mean? Otherwise, if you had a steak every day for 1 year, you'd have, say, 90% of the meat, 10% of the fat. You'd literally be 10% fat, and the 90% of the food you eat would have been irrelevant, because the only reason why you would get fat is because of eating the fat. You know what I mean? But that's not why we get fat. The fat is the food in excessiveness.
Yeah,
So
too
having
many.
fat doesn't make you fat. Just like having food that has high cholesterol, like a prawn has high cholesterol, doesn't give us high cholesterol, right? Because high cholesterol is is too much plaque in our body, and plaque is just food. So hearing that prawns are high cholesterol doesn't mean that that's going to give us high cholesterol. It's like
Ah,
giving a massive guy 2 dinners. He can cope with that. Giving you a dinner, you're not going to be able to cope with half of it. So you process it different to how a massive, huge guy would process it. He could have 2 meals. You can't even finish one. So just because a prawn has high cholesterol, fat in a prawn, doesn't mean we're gonna get fat from the prawn. You know what I mean?
right. Yeah, I don't know much about cholesterol. That's something that I'm really curious about. I don't eat a lot of cholesterol food. I'm vegetarian, so I don't eat a lot of cholesterol, so I don't really know much about it. But I do feel like if you eat a lot of cholesterol and you don't work out, you're gonna have high cholesterol. I think that one's true. I think that one's true because the way that I think it is. I'm pretty sure that one. I agree with the fat one and the calorie one because it is. It's just It's like more calories in than you're burning is going to be stored as fat. You know what I mean? Like it's like, oh, I have extra calories. I'm going to store it for later. But I think cholesterol is something because cholesterol comes from animals, and like again, going back to this whole cow thing, the way that our body processes it, it doesn't process it in some ways, like the part of it that we don't process is the cholesterol. I'm not an expert with this, but I think that there's something there with the cholesterol. I'm curious to learn more about it. You should research it and then tell me more about it.
So, for example, if somebody has heart disease, right, it means that their arteries are filled with fat, right? So you could say that they have high cholesterol, and they need to reduce their cholesterol to reduce their plaque on their arteries, right? So that's saying he needs to reduce his cholesterol, meaning he needs to reduce the amount of foods that are putting cholesterol into his body. What is that? Fatty foods that are sticky. So you could say like meat and prawn, for example, that is creating this cholesterol. But it's generally foods that have these fats in that over time create high cholesterol, which is just fatty deposits in our arteries. But saying that if you have a prawn that is in high cholesterol isn't going to specifically give you high
Right,
cholesterol. It's
right.
it's the general of everything in one go. Like if you have loads of carbs, right, you're going to get fat, right? But it's not the carb that's making you fat, it's the amount of it. So
Yeah.
having a prawn or a steak isn't going to do like much to your body, but overall, the prawn, the steak, the carbs, and fucking the sugar and everything is going to build up enough fat, which you could say is cholesterol. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if it's from an animal,
So if
but
someone's
yeah,
got high cholesterol, you don't have to stop eating prawns because they are high cholesterol. Because the reason we've got high cholesterol is because the all of the food that you eat, that's
right.
creating one big like fat basket. You know, I
Yeah,
think I've explained it better now. Does that make sense?
yeah, totally. It's really just the amount of food people are eating versus the output that they have that's creating the health
Yeah.
effects. They're just focusing on these minuscule things that aren't the issue, but it's the bigger issue that they're not focusing on because they don't want to focus on this because this is what they want to do. So they're focusing on the small things because that, like, oh, I can't eat that, but I still eat, 6,000 calories.
It's like if I have a massive bag of Doritos, I I feel absolutely fine, right? Because my body's not used to having that much crap in, and it's so efficient at removing junk that it'll just go through my body. I enjoyed that taste and it's gone. Having it every single day will build up sugars and fats in me, which ends up being, say, high cholesterol. So that's the same as the prawn. Just because something has something in it, like if you're a fat person and you don't want to get fatter and you think, okay, cream is fat, I'm not going to eat cream. That's fucking nonsense, right? Because you're eating all this other stuff that is putting additional food, which is fat, in your body. That the prawn or the cream that has fat in, that's not why you're fat. You're fat because of additional excessive food. And it's not even food that has fat in, it's just too much food. So again, this thing about fat and being fat, it's two different things because fat is the energy that we need to burn. Keto diet. I'm on a keto diet. I have 2 meals a day. Have my nuts and my olives and shit at lunchtime, 12, and I eat at 8 o'clock. That's all I
Wow,
eat. It lasts me all day. And yet people have a
that's amazing.
sandwich for lunch. A sandwich. You think about a sandwich, right? Pathetic
Yeah,
bit of
right.
ham in the middle, pathetic bit of cheese. What the fuck is that going to do? That little bit of cheese, like what is that going to do in your massive stomach here? And that bread, again, it fills you up because it expands in your stomach when it goes to water. And then an hour later, when it just disperses into nothing, you've got this pathetic bit of cheese. Like, all right, mate. Uh, like, is that what is that gonna do? Right, we have a bag of crisps, so some thin potato. Like, what is that gonna do? And then like again, it's all wrong, and that is why people are fat because all that bread and that carb, we're not supposed to be in our body anyway. So it puts it to one side, and then you have a sandwich the next day. It puts that to one side, and then it's the weekend, and you've been at work all week, so you've not done any exercise, and then you're too tired at the weekend to do any exercise. So those sandwiches just sit there, and then the next week comes along, and you just get bigger and bigger and bigger.
It's a hard life.
And think about Christmas time. It's shocking how quickly people put on weight over Christmas. Like, how can you put on an additional pound or stone over what, a month? It doesn't make sense. But when you realize how much food people eat versus exercise and how
Oh,
crucial exercise is to balancing out what we eat, and we don't need like 90% of the food we put in our body anyway because we're efficient enough to go a few days without eating. It does make sense why at Christmas time people can put on a stone so
totally,
quickly, and yeah,
totally.
it takes so long to burn off.
Hmm. Well, yeah, totally. Because I mean, it stores easy because that's a survival technique, and it burns slow because that's a survival technique.
Yeah.
And of course, oh my gosh, and I mean, the combination of the amount of food we eat plus our change in activity because we're not going outside. Well, places that have winter, we're not going to go outside as much because we want to nest. We want to cuddle up. We want to like sit by the fire and drink hot cocoa and like consume instead of um, use calories.
Yeah, and it's also tricky because when we think of something, we do it, and then the more we think of it, the more we want it. So you're sitting at home and then you're bored. First thing you think about is food. So you go to the fridge
Mm-hmm.
and then you eat and then you're bored because you can't go outside because it's too cold to do anything. So you just
Yeah.
keep eating. So it's a vicious circle, just like um a tree dropping acorns which keep creating more acorns. It's a vicious circle. There's fucking trees everywhere. Christ's sake. Squirrels keep burying these damn nuts. That's another one over there. Bloody squirrel. Buried all these.
And that's the cycle of life. We eat a lot of food, we get fat, and then we die from high cholesterol. And the trees keep making nuts, and the squirrels dig them up or bury them, and that's life.
Right, we'll end on that high. So there's more to speak about next time. Is there anything you want to promote?
Yeah, I actually have a new course. I just launched a new course and I'm really excited about it. It's currently enrolling. It's called Soul Wisdom. It's supporting people. It's a simple program to help people reset. Like there's so much overwhelm right now, so much stimulation, so much like, okay, I want to be doing something. And also I'm like burnt out. This program is designed to like help people reset, realign, restructure themselves. It's a ritual-based program that supports you in reconstructing your life, reclaiming your power, developing your intuition, and living a more soul-led life instead of a fear-led life. It's we begin it December 13th. That's all I want to share about because I'm pretty stoked about it. Oh, actually, there's one more thing around the topic. I'm doing an Instagram giveaway. I'm opening it up on Thursday. It is going to be.
I wouldn't bother saying that because this is going to be scheduled for a few months down the line. So that specific thing, I wouldn't bother. I mean, you could say it if it's going to be around if it's not going anywhere.
I'm going to be doing the Instagram giveaway until January.
Oh, you might as well say it then.
Yeah. I'm going to be doing the Instagram until January. I'm just giving back to my community. It's been a while since I've did a giveaway. And so each week in December, I'm going to be giving away something different. And it just gets better and better. I'm really excited to get back.
Website, Instagram?
Instagram.com/ashley.dufresne. It's Dufresne.
Right. Anything else before I stop the thing?
No, that's it. This is so much fun. Thank you so much for calling back on. It's a great conversation.
Okay, wait, the ones